I never thought my marriage of 20 years would end because of a casual dinner conversation. Life has a way of revealing secrets when you least expect them, and that's exactly what happened to me last Christmas. My wife and I met in high school. She was a senior, I was a junior. We were the typical high school sweethearts, navigating our way through young love. When she went to college on the East Coast, we decided to try long distance. I stayed back to finish high school and did a year at community college. Those 2 years were tough, but I made the 3-hour drive to visit her a couple weekends each month. Looking back, I was so proud of how we managed to keep our relationship strong despite the distance. After those 2 years, I transferred to her college, and from there, we were inseparable. We built our life together, got married right after my graduation, and had 2 amazing kids who are now 17 and 19. For 2 decades, I thought we had the perfect love story, high school sweethearts who made it through the challenges of long distance and grew stronger together. Then came that dinner with her old college friends. It started innocently enough. We were having a cozy evening, catching up with Sarah and Rachel, my wife's former roommates. The conversation was flowing, filled with laughter and old memories. My wife mentioned that we'd met in high school, but she didn't specify that we'd been dating since then. That's when Rachel exclaimed how remarkable it was that we met so young, had our wild college years, and still ended up together. I played along, making a joke about not being sure if my wife was as wild as I had been. That's when Sarah started to say something, but my wife cut her off abruptly, saying she felt uncomfortable. The sudden shift in her behavior made my stomach turn. The rest of the evening felt like walking on eggshells, with an undercurrent of tension that was impossible to ignore. As we were leaving, Rachel pulled me aside. "You should have an honest conversation with your wife about what really happened during her college years," she said quietly. Those words would change everything. On the drive home, I tried to talk to my wife about what Rachel had hinted at. She dismissed it, saying it wasn't important. But her defensive attitude only made my suspicions grow stronger. When we got home, I took a stand. I told her I'd stay at my brother's house until she was ready to talk about what really happened during those college years. The next day, she came to see me. What she revealed shook the foundation of everything I thought I knew about our relationship. She admitted to sleeping with multiple men during those first 2 years of college, at least 10 different guys. But what hit me hardest was learning that 3 of them were people she had introduced to me as friends during my weekend visits. One of them was even still in our social circle, married to a mutual friend from college. My world crumbled. Every memory of those college visits, every party where I'd met her friends, every moment I thought we were growing stronger despite the distance, it all felt like a lie. The worst part wasn't just the infidelity. It was how she tried to downplay it, saying she didn't think our high school romance would last anyway. I knew right then that I couldn't continue our marriage. The trust wasn't just broken, it had been systematically destroyed over 20 years of deception. On January 2nd, I started the divorce paperwork. The aftermath of my decision hit like a tidal wave. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion about my choice to end the marriage. My wife's family, most of my family, and even some friends kept telling me I was overreacting. "Everyone makes mistakes," they'd say. "You're throwing away 20 years over something that happened in college." But they didn't understand. This wasn't just about the cheating. It was about 2 decades of lies. It was about how she had maintained friendships with these men right in front of me, introduced them as friends, and acted like nothing had ever happened. How do you rebuild trust after learning something like that? I reached out to Rachel again, wanting to understand more about those college years. What she told me made my stomach turn. Apparently, 10 guys was a conservative estimate. She also mentioned there had been at least 1 pregnancy scare during that time. Each new revelation felt like another knife in my back. The most frustrating part was my wife's attitude about it all. She kept insisting that sleeping with other people during a long-distance relationship was completely normal. She and some of her friends tried to convince me that I was the odd one out for not doing the same. It felt like I was being gaslit, made to question my own feelings and reactions. Sure, we saw each other a couple weekends each month during those years. I'd make the 3-hour drive to her college, often attending parties where I now know some of these guys were present. The guy who married our mutual friend, he was still in our lives, not because of any secret contact, but because our social circles overlapped. When I confronted him, he claimed he had no idea we were dating back then, and immediately blocked my wife on social media out of respect for me. The timing of everything was getting to me, too. She only showed any sign of remorse when I started filing the divorce paperwork. Even then, it felt more like damage control than genuine regret. Within a week, she was back to insisting she'd done nothing wrong and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I agreed to try therapy, thinking maybe we could work through this. But her constant dismissal of my feelings made it impossible. In our sessions, she tried to shift blame, suggesting I had somehow pushed her into those situations by wanting to attend college parties during my visits. She said she hadn't intentionally paraded me in front of these guys, they just happened to be at the same parties, and she couldn't avoid it. Then came two revelations that sealed the deal for me. First, I learned that about 10 years ago, when we went through a rough patch in our intimate life, it was because she was fixated on experiences from her college days. She wanted me to recreate certain things, but then felt guilty because it reminded her of other men. How could these encounters be meaningless if they were still affecting our marriage a decade later? The second blow came when she admitted to flirting with coworkers during recent business trips. She swore nothing physical happened, but she had gone on a date with one of her male colleagues. That was it for me, the final straw. It showed me that the pattern of deception wasn't just in the past. It was still very much present. Telling our kids about the divorce was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. We kept it simple, explaining that it stemmed from decisions made during college that we couldn't move past. My 19-year-old, who's in college herself, surprised us by directly asking if I had cheated on my wife during her college years. I could see the shock on my wife's face, but she stepped up and admitted that she was the one who had been unfaithful. I guess my daughter's question made sense. She's had her share of boyfriends who either cheated on her or left her for someone else. Seeing me leave the house probably made her assume I was the guilty one. But we agreed to keep the details minimal. The kids don't need to know everything, but they do need to know they can talk to either of us or see a therapist if they're struggling with the situation. The divorce process itself was surprisingly smooth. We're both financially stable, and with our kids being older, custody wasn't a huge issue. The only hiccup came when our 17-year-old insisted on staying with me. He gave his mom an ultimatum: either let him process things his way, or force him to stay and risk losing him completely once he turned 18. Though I thought he was being harsh, it did make my wife back down. I've been encouraging him to work on his relationship with his mom. Lately, I've noticed him spending more time with her, which gives me hope. We split everything 50-50, retirement funds, investments, everything. She kept the house since she really liked it and took out a mortgage to pay me my share of the equity. We divided up our personal belongings without much drama. Having an insurance inventory of our valuable items actually made this part easier. In a classic midlife crisis move, I traded my minivan for a Lexus LC 550. But you know what? That car brings me more joy than I expected. I move into a new house that feels like a fresh start, and both kids spend most of their time with me, which was my biggest worry during all of this. We're still doing couples counseling, but now it's focused on closure and co-parenting. These sessions have actually confirmed that divorce was the right choice. I found out my wife started dating as soon as the divorce process began. That coworker she claimed was just a friend even dropped her off at our recent therapy session. Surprisingly, I wasn't even upset. I guess that showed me I was ready to move on too. Recently, a woman from work from different department thankfully asked me out for coffee. I was honest with her about not being ready to date yet, but she offered to take a rain check until I am. She's smart and funny, and knowing there's someone interested in me when I'm ready feels nice. I cried more in the past 4 months than in the last 20 years combined, but things are getting better. For the first time in a while, I feel good about myself. I'm busy helping my younger one prepare for college in the fall, enjoying my independence, and looking forward to that coffee date when I'm ready. This whole experience taught me the importance of honest communication. Looking back, I wish we'd been more open with each other from the start. It might have saved us both some pain. But more importantly, I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. Despite the heartache, I'm rebuilding my life, and for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what the future holds. The divorce is final now, and while it's not the ending I expected to my love story, maybe it's the beginning of a better chapter. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead us to where we need to be.